because I know on your podcast, on the Adventure Fit podcast, you spoke a lot about. Yep, that was good. Can't think of it now. What do you call it? With your breathing,
we'll just cut all this bit out.
Meditation. So, are you still doing that regularly in the morning?
Oh, I didn't actually meditate for about 5 months throughout this year.
Okay.
And I just started dabbling back in, but I went probably 3 years where nearly every morning I would meditate. You know.
Yep.
But what I actually did was I had a bit of a rough period over the last, just probably the last 3 months. I wasn't really where I wanted to be, so. I actually started meditating when I started a wellness routine again.
Yep.
So I've got this big board at my house. It's a big bit of ply, and I've like painted it black with little squares. Well, I made it look pretty, and it's effectively it says it was a calendar, and I turned it into a wellness board. So it's my wellness routine, and I have on the left, across the top, I have days of the week. On the left, I have things I want to do in the day, and it's like 8 hours sleep, make my bed, cold shower, meditate, journal, train, exercise, see my mates, switch off my phone. I think that's it. And I actually, to get back into a routine, because I've done it twice in the past where I've gamified my routine.
Yep.
So I try and score myself and better myself and so on and so forth.
Yep.
It's pretty sweet. So I've done it for 8 weeks now, and I'm giving myself this week off. And I'll only do it I might not pick it back up, or I'll do it for maybe another month, and then I'll probably scrap it for another couple of years. But just to reintegrate that routine back into my life. And I noticed, I was like, fuck, I haven't meditated for 3 or 4 months. And I've started meditating a little bit again, but I have so many bits and pieces that I throw into my days that prepare me to, be the best version of myself. Meditation is one of them. And I used to think it was, a huge driver and the be all and end all. But now I think it's a nice to have. And I actually think there's a couple of other more significant bits and pieces that I need to do. This is just me. Everyone's different. And that's around getting sleep and seeing my mates, really.
Yeah.
Seeing people, being around people.
Yep.
And particularly my mates, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because you talk about being in the now, and I think anyone that hasn't meditated at all probably doesn't fully understand it because it wasn't until I haven't done a whole lot of it. It's just we've done some drills. I did my mental health first aid. We did some breathing.
Mental health first aid?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Mental health first aid is a course that
this is in the Fireys, right?
Yeah, but it's still a nationally recognised course.
Yeah, right.
It's essentially to educate you on how to better assist people and look for the signs. So I did suicide prevention, a suicide awareness and prevention course, which was a course we had to do as a senior NCO in the Air Force, which again is to look for signs or whatever. But the mental health first aid, it was a great couple of days. It was really interesting. It's a relatively new course, and the Fire Brigade is super proactive with being on top of this because it is such an issue in the emergency services. And over that course, so they talk about looking out for these signs, helping someone. This is how you can do it. This is where you can lead them. This is what you can do. But at the end of the day, you still need to go and look after yourself because if I listen to all your problems right now and I provide that space for you, that's great. It's not saying I'm going to walk out the door and have an issue, but I still have taken on that burden anyway. So I need to go out and make sure that I can then make sure that I'm looking after myself. So they were even talking about from there to do even a minute of meditation or breathing. And I found that's when I started it. And I sat there and my mind, they said, your mind's going to race, come back and try and think of this. Your mind's going to race. In 60 seconds, my mind was in 75 places. I don't know how that was possible. Yeah. And I'm thinking, okay, come back to it. And I'm like, I've got this now. And then, come back to it. And it blew me away of how much I would struggle to be in that moment at that time to concentrate on one thing. Yeah. So it's something that I try and incorporate when I feel like it. It's not a daily routine. I don't have it locked in, but it's when I just feel like I'm just going to sit and just get my shit together, basically.
It definitely does work. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I've used it always as for me, meditation, because people used to talk to me all the time. They still do a bit about meditation because I would talk about it on the podcast and, whatever. And I would always say to them, like, look, they go, do you think you're better off that you meditate? And I'm like, you know what? I think I am, but I don't really know. Because I just think that if I'm meditating, I'm probably going to be a slightly better version of myself, slightly more grounded, slightly more, level-headed and whatever. But I don't really know because I'm not taking data on myself every day. And I'm not before meditation, after, during, whatever. So, But I do have one example, and it was when I was a non-believer. So I had the Headspace app, and it's 10 free meditations. And this was like 5 years ago when I started. It was still the same thing. It was still 10 onboarding free meditations from Headspace.
Yep.
And so I was going through a bit of that social anxiety stuff and whatever, and just not doing super well, not doing super bad either. And I reckon I did the first one, and then I was like, oh, that was fucked. I hated that. Because you think you're doing it poorly. You think you suck at it, you know?
Yep.
And then I probably did the next one 2 weeks later, and then I did the next one a week later, and then I was just like, I'm no good at this. This sucks, and I hate every second of it. And I didn't do it for another month. Then it was like 2 months. I reckon I got to about less than 7 of this 10-step guided meditation app, and it took me about 18 months. And then one day, because Adventure Fit was so stressful, and I remember having my laptop open, and I was sitting there, and I had all these fires to put out. And I'm talking like decent-sized fires. Like, I was a nightmare of a scenario. Yep. And I was like, okay, cool, where do I start? And I was trying to calm myself. Come on, you need to get to work. You need to just knock them off one at a time. And no matter what I did, all I could do was stare at the screen. And I never really had this before. So much stress where I couldn't actually type and start because I didn't know where to start. I was just so overwhelmed. Yep. And I thought to myself, I was like, oh, fuck, I'm going to have to fucking do something here. I'm like, I'm going to try this fucking rubbish meditation shit again. So I go to my room and I put in the Headspace app and I started breathing and whatever. And don't know whether it was talking about it in the guided nature of the guided meditation, but or whether I was just thinking about it. But let's say they were talking about it. They were like, okay, cool, you might have a lot of thoughts in your head. And I was like, yeah, I've got fucking 500,000 thoughts in my head right now. And then it's like a couple more breaths. It's like you should feel some thoughts go away and subside. I'm like, oh, yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I feel like I've got 200,000. And then like, 2 more. And I'm like, oh, I feel like I've got 500 things in my head. This seems to be working. 50 things, 10 things, 2 things, 1 thing, still. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? It was insane. It's given me kind of goosebumps remembering back to it because I was like, I'd never had that before, and I finished. There was still like 5 minutes to go on the meditation, so I just concentrated on the breath, felt totally still, and I got up off the bed and I went like this. I went, stretched myself out. All right, let's fucking get to work. And I sat down and I just started knocking off, all the tasks and putting out all the fires, and that was the one day that definitely did sell me on meditation. And I've never really had as impactful of an instance as that. But that, for me, proved meditation's efficacy straight away. I was like, that's fucking insane. It's incredible. I'll tell you another thing which is quite funny. So the only other time I felt like that, where I felt fully cleared of thoughts, so completely, was I took 10 grams of mushrooms about 18 months ago. Yep. So a hero's dose of magic mushrooms, which is like next level, put you on fucking another planet, another universe, is 5 grams, and I had 9.5 grams, halfway accidentally, and halfway just being a fucking moron.
It's not like you.
But it's so funny. I've talked about this on the podcast before. I wouldn't recommend doing it. I did it by myself. It's the dumbest thing I've ever done, really. Like, it was fucking stupid. But anyway, I did it. But aside from all the other weird and wonderful and weird, wacky stuff that happened, I thought I died. I thought I was dead. And I was fucking crying my eyes out. 4 hours I thought I was dead. I was writing letters to my parents. And I thought I was because I was in my body. I could see where I was, but I thought that I was in the space between death and actual everything's gone, in that grace period, life flashing before your eyes, basically. That's where I thought I was. Yeah. And because I thought I had died, at one point I walked out and looked up at the stars and I said to myself, well, that's fucking it, eh? But the funny thing was, for this whole 4 hour period, I was sad as fuck, because all I could think about was my brother and my mum, my dad a little bit, a couple of my mates, really my brother and my mum. And I felt my mum was going to be so upset. I'm going to miss my brother so much. But having said that, every other thing that I've ever stressed about in my life, every bit of anxiety, every bit of, stress, every bit of depressive moods, I had none of it. Like, for the 5 hours that I thought I was dead, 4 or 5 hours, I was the most at peace I've ever been.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Because I'd actually, in my own head, I'd come to the realization, nothing to stress about anymore.
Yeah.
What's the point of stressing, So, and I was recalling my life. And like I said, I was sad, but it was the most at peace I've ever been also.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's quite interesting, yeah. It's quite interesting. And I just think it's because you just you don't have that stuff to stress about. But it's funny something you mentioned earlier. You said, looking after yourself when you have people around you that aren't doing so well. I reckon in the last 3 months, I had that period where I was having a bit of a rough trot, and I've had people around me that have been suicidal, good friends of mine, and it fucking takes it out of you. It absolutely, I reckon it cooked me a bit, It really cooked me.
So did you do anything to look after yourself at that point, or were you just pretty much just carrying it?
Nah, probably didn't do anything for long enough. That's when I started the wellness thing again. I'm like, right, I got to fucking straighten myself out a little bit here. Started seeing my psychologist again. I've just seen him once, but I've booked in a few to keep up with him. A little bit. But when I talk about the wellness stuff, that's incorporating, getting 8 hours sleep every night, meditation. There's about 10 things in that wellness thing that started again. So, but it's a heavy burden to bear, other people's.
I think it's even the helplessness as well, because you don't have an answer. You can't change their mood. You can't. Or when I say mood, not necessarily that they're cranky or anything, but you can't change their mindset. It's a slow process, and if anything, we feel bad. We feel bad that we can't help, and I think it's just and it is. We just take it on board, and you could see quite easily how you got into a rut as well yourself without looking after yourself. So, and that's where this mental health first aid is. It's definitely pitched at everybody, but it applied really well to the fire brigade, because we don't want a flow-on effect of somebody struggling, then you're trying to help them, then you get it, and then we have this domino effect, So, I think it was one of the better things. Oh, one of the better. There was lots of good things, but it was a really good thing to come out of the course. Talking about looking after yourself, and they make a big point of that. So
you can't help others if you can't help yourself.
Exactly.
It's like a relationship. You can't, like my last relationship, the long-term-ish relationship, where I was together for a year with Jill, and that was at my worst point mental health wise. And I really believe in the whole, you can't love someone else without loving yourself. And I'm not saying I had no self-love or whatever they say, but my life was just hectic, I couldn't keep my own head above water rather than be a good, boyfriend, partner to somebody else. So it's super